Okay, so this tutorial is all to do with the mathematical strand of real number, and more specifically, we're going to focus on adding and subtracting fractions. Okay, so what you need to know about adding fractions is that in order to add the fractions, you need to ensure that the denominators are actually the same numerical value. All right, what I mean by that is, as an example, let's say we have 1/4 and we want to add 2/4. We can do that because both of these fractions are in quarters. If they weren't, we'd have to change the fractions in order to put them into quarters. But since these are in quarters, okay, we know our last denominator is going to be quarters, but we can just add the numerators now. So 1 plus 2 gives us 3. Don't ever add the denominators, okay? The denominator stays the same through the whole thing. If you find that you're trying to add fractions but you have a different denominator, then what you need to do is you need to find a lowest common multiple of both denominators, all right, so that new fractions have the same denominator. And what I mean by that is let's have a look at an example. Let's say we've got 1/2 plus 1/3. All right, you can see here that we have a 3 and a 2, so they're different. We can't just add them. What we've got to essentially do is find the lowest common multiple of 2 and 3. Now I know that that's 6, all right, and we're going to create an equivalent fraction. So 1/2 is the same as 3/6, and 1/3 is the same as 2/6. So therefore now you can see that we have a common denominator. That means that our denominator is just going to be 6, and we've got 3 plus 2, which is 5. So remember, you need to find a lowest common multiple of two denominators if they are different. All right, create the equivalent fractions so that the denominators are the same, and then you can just add straight across. So the same rules apply for when you're subtracting fractions. All right, to subtract fractions, the denominators must be the same. If they are the same, you can just go ahead and subtract the numerators. So as an example, let's say we have 4/5 and we want to take away 2/5. All right, we can take away straight away just the numerators because the denominators are actually the same. All right, now remember the denominator stays the same throughout the whole thing. Don't take the denominators away, but we just take away the numerators. So 4 take 2 gives us 2. So again, when we're subtracting fractions that have different denominators, we need to find the lowest common multiple. As an example, let's say we have 2/3 and we want to take away 1/4. All right, we can see here that 3 and 4 are different denominators. So we need to actually find the lowest common multiple of 3 and 4. Now I know the lowest common multiple of 3 and 4 is going to be 12. So I'm now going to have equivalent fractions where I have 12 as my denominator. 2/3 is actually going to be 8/12. 1/4 is actually going to be 3/12. So now, since we have the same denominator, okay, we've now got 12 and 12, I can just write this as 8 take 3, which is 5, all over 12. Okay, you're now going to have a go at some practice questions. When the questions arrive on the screen, if you can pause the video, try and answer them. When you think you've got the right answers, then continue on and we'll go through and check them. Okay, so here's 4 questions. Please feel free to pause the video and have a go at them, and then we'll go through the answers once you're done. Okay, so let's see how you went. In our first example, you can see that we've actually got the same denominator, which means we can just add the numerators, and that would give us 7/8. In our second example, you can see that we actually have different denominators, so we need to find the lowest common multiple of 4 and 2. Well, it's actually 4. Right, so the first fraction stays the same. The second fraction is simply doubled. So now this gives us an answer of 5/4. In our third example, you can see that the denominators are actually the same. So we can keep it as 8, 5 take 3 is 2, and we can actually cancel this down to 1/4. In our last example, you can see that the denominators are actually different. So we have a 3 and a 4. We need to change these denominators to be a common denominator. And we know from our previous slides that our lowest common multiple of 3 and 4 is 12. Alright, so this first fraction becomes 8/12. Second fraction becomes 3/12. And this is very similar to the example we did, where we end up with 5/12.